Okay, so you brought us some really interesting material today about the capture of Turtle Bay Depot, early American Revolution stuff.
Yeah, that's right. We've got a PDF, the Wikipedia article, even a couple of images. An old storehouse picture looks quite evocative.
Cool. So our mission basically is to sift through this and get a clear picture, you know, what happened, who did it, and like why does this specific event matter in the grand scheme of things? Let's dive in.
Absolutely. It's like putting together historical clues. We see what these sources say and figure out the bigger story they tell about the start of the revolution.
All right, so the main event, this military raid on Turtle Bay Depot. What exactly was this place? A fort?
Not quite a fort. Think more supply hub. Both the PDF and Wikipedia call it a British magazine and storehouse.
A magazine. So gunpowder, ammo.
Yeah, likely gunpowder, maybe other supplies too. Food, uniforms, tools, basically essential stuff for the British troops operating around New York City.
Okay, so definitely a worthwhile target for the Patriots.
Yeah.
And the timing. When did this happen? Sounds like a covert thing.
It was. The sources agree it was the night of July 20th, 1775.
Wow, July 75. That's really early. Just a few months after Lexington and Concord, right?
Exactly. Tensions were sky high, but, the major fighting in New York hadn't really kicked off yet.
And the location. Turtle Bay, Manhattan. It's hard to picture Manhattan back then. What was Turtle Bay like?
Well, it was on the East River side. That image we have of the old storehouse kind of
Oh,
helps.
yeah, the two-story building near the water.
It really shows how crucial the waterways were. So, Turtle Bay would have been a key spot for ships bringing in supplies. Not empty countryside, but definitely not the packed city we know now.
Gotcha. That image does paint a picture. Okay, so we know the what, when, and where. Who actually carried out this raid? It wasn't the Continental Army yet, was it?
No, not the formal army. This was the Sons of Liberty.
Ah, the Sons of Liberty. Figures. They're always stirring things up.
Definitely. The sources name some key leaders involved. Marinus Willett, John Lamb, Isaac Sears, Alexander McDougall. These were pretty prominent figures in the New York Patriot movement, real movers and shakers.
So basically committed civilians pulling off a military-style raid. What does that tell us about the mood back then?
It shows incredible initiative, doesn't it? I mean, these weren't trained soldiers, but they took on a risky nighttime operation against a British supply point. It really underscores their commitment and their willingness to act boldly, even before the army was fully organized. A real grassroots effort.
And they didn't just hit the depot, right? There's something about a ship, the Asia.
That's right. Good point. They didn't just grab the stuff on land. They also seized the British ship Asia.
Whoa, why go after a ship too?
Well, we can guess, maybe hoping for more supplies, or maybe just to disrupt British naval power there. It shows they were thinking bigger than just the storehouse contents.
Sounds like a win for the Patriots then.
Mhm.
Wikipedia calls it an American victory.
Mm.
Any immediate fallout? Did the British hit back right away?
It was definitely a victory in terms of supplies and morale. The sources don't really detail a specific British counterattack or casualties right after, but, a successful raid like this would have sent a clear message.
A message that the Patriots were organized and weren't messing around.
Exactly. Bold action.
Okay, so they got the goods. Where did all these captured supplies actually go? That seems key to understanding the raid's importance.
Yeah, that's where it gets really strategic. Both sources highlight that the supplies weren't just kept locally, they were distributed
Distributed where?
to a few key places. Some went to Boston. Remember, Boston was under siege by the British then?
Right, they would have desperately needed supplies.
And crucially, supplies also went north to the Patriots on Lake Champlain and to Fort Ticonderoga.
Lake Champlain and Ticonderoga. Why there?
Well, Lake Champlain was the vital route between the colonies and Canada. Controlling it was huge. And Fort Ticonderoga, which the Patriots had captured earlier, had all that valuable artillery.
Ah, okay. So sending supplies there helped secure that northern front and maybe move cannons.
Precisely. It shows they weren't just thinking locally, they were looking at the broader war effort. In Boston, it helped sustain the siege resistance. Up north, it bolstered defenses and supported control of that key waterway. It suggests a surprising level of coordination.
Interesting. And the story at Turtle Bay itself didn't end with the raid, did it? They built something there afterwards, a redoubt.
Yes, the Turtle Bay Redoubt. After seizing the depot, the Patriots clearly saw the spot's value, overlooking the East River. So they fortified it.
To solidify their control, prevent the British from using it again.
Exactly. A proactive move to secure their gain.
Okay, now here's the bit that really jumped out at me from the Wikipedia article. It says this redoubt, this little fortification from 1775, was on the exact spot where the UN headquarters is today. Is that right?
It is. Isn't that incredible? That connection across centuries.
That's just wild. A site of early American rebellion later becomes this global center for diplomacy.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? The layers of history on one piece of land, from conflict to, well, the attempt at global cooperation, it's quite the contrast.
A powerful juxtaposition, for sure. Okay, let's quickly touch on the sources themselves. The Wikipedia article, how solid is the info there?
Well, Wikipedia always needs a careful eye, but this article does provide its retrieval info, and importantly, it lists its own sources.
Which were?
It cites Robert B. Roberts' Encyclopedia of Historic Forts and The War of the American Revolution by Coakley and Kahn. These are, established historical works.
So the Wikipedia page is basically summarizing information from credible historians.
It appears so, yes. It points towards deeper research.
Good. And that image, the old storehouse, what does that add?
It gives us a visual anchor. You see this fairly simple, functional building right by the water. It helps to picture the scene, maybe understand why the Sons of Liberty saw it as a target valuable, but perhaps not heavily defended. Makes their success seem more plausible.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got the raid itself, Sons of Liberty, hitting the British depot, grabbing supplies, even seizing a ship, the Asia. Key figures like Willett and Lamb involved.
And then the crucial distribution of those supplies to Boston, Lake Champlain, Ticonderoga, impacting the wider war.
And that amazing historical twist, the site later becoming the UN headquarters after the Patriots built the Turtle Bay Redoubt there.
And we see this info comes from recognized historical sources, backed up by that visual of the old storehouse.
So pulling it all together, this capture of Turtle Bay Depot, well, maybe not a huge battle, really highlights the Patriots early. Well, grit and resourcefulness. It had ripples beyond just New York.
Absolutely. And that UN connection is just a fascinating reminder of how places change and history builds on itself in unexpected ways. Conflict giving way to diplomacy centuries later on the same ground.
It really is something. So, thinking about this raid, maybe relatively small in scale, what does it ultimately tell us about those early Patriot strategies? How much do these kinds of, less famous actions contribute to the overall momentum of the revolution? And what does it suggest about how seemingly minor events can echo through history in ways no one could predict? Definitely leaves you with something to chew on.
Indeed it does. A small event with surprisingly long tendrils.